So let me start by telling you what it's not. So it's very different from Google search, right? So think about the Google search experience, okay? What Google does is it indexes the web, right? So you put in search terms, and it spits back, could be pages and pages and pages of web pages that you need to go and look at and try to find the answer that you were looking for. The models like ChatGPT don't work like that. They're generative, okay? So that means that they can generate content based on what they've been trained on and not just spitting back a web page. And what that does is kind of alleviates you from having to do all that, right? So, and you know, it's not perfect, but what also is interesting about it, though, is a conversational aspect, right? So you can ask a question, and you could say, please refine that, or you know, please explain that to me as if I was a high schooler. And the word "it," you know, is actually hard for computers to understand because it has to keep the context running of what the questions have been and the conversation. So, and beyond, you know, just generating answers, succinct answers, it can perform other tasks, right? And this is not just about text. ChatGPT is just a very simple interface that hits an API, which means that it connects to a server somewhere in the cloud and accesses one of these large language models. So if you've used ChatGPT, you are using an LLM. If you use Bing search, you are using an LLM. What is an LLM? Large language model. What that means is these massive neural networks, okay, get trained on literally trillions of sequences of vocabulary. Let's just say English language, for example, but it's being done with every language. And by the way, these are language models, but they've become what we call multimodal. So the same model can operate on text, video, images, music. So it's a very interesting space that's evolving. But really what happens is the model is given, let's say, a sentence, okay? But it's only given randomly, words are masked out in the sentence, and the model has to learn to predict the word, okay? Once it's done being trained, when you ask it a question, it starts generating word by word, okay? So what was the example you said before?
So if we put in maybe twinkle, twinkle,
right. So
what comes after that?
Most likely it would be little.
And then?
So then it takes twinkle, twinkle, little.
See if our audience can figure it out. Twinkle, twinkle, little.
Right.
There we go.
So what's interesting is these are recurrent. So it starts building the sentence, and then it feeds it back into itself. Now, once it got to star, it's pretty darn confident, right? So really, so that's how a large language model works, and that's what you're using when you use things like ChatGPT.
All right, so that sounds good, but there's got to be a little bit of a catch. Tell us what we need to be concerned about.
Yeah, so again, neural networks are, and AI is really all math. So it's calculus, it's linear algebra, and it's probability. So these are all probabilistic. So in other words, that means, okay, when it looked at star, right, when it was looking at the next word, which it came up with star, it probably, you know, said 90% likelihood the word is star, but it also had, you know, 10% that were other things, right? That leads to what we call hallucinating. So this is the term that's used when the model just makes stuff up, right? And how do you know, what's made up and what's real? That's a real problem. Like, that's an unsolved problem. Another problem is, so these models get trained and over a period of time. Some of them take weeks, some take months, and they cost many millions of dollars just to train them, okay? But the thing is that once the training is done, let's say one of the GPT models was trained until the end, December of 2022, okay? It knows nothing about the world beyond that, right? Doesn't know about current events, recent events. So just recently, OpenAI, who are the folks behind ChatGPT, added the ability now for the model to realize that it's being asked about something that's more current, and now that it does a Google search, basically, I think, on the back end,
Just
right?
snapping it all together.
So,